Hey guys, it's Intricate from AmigaLove.com. Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to walk through some really cool software for GEOS specifically. I just got through wrapping up a 3-part series where I walked through various versions of battle stations, hardware battle stations in Commodore 8-bit land that you can assemble if you want to go grab some of this really cool old vintage hardware and how you might put those together to create the ultimate system that can run GEOS. But what I want to do today is actually do a little bit of a deeper dive into some of my favorite software for the platform. And these packages were actually created by Berkeley Softworks, sort of like Microsoft. It's another way of thinking about it. They also create not just Windows, but they create Office and all of these little individual apps that are inside of Office. And those are all very useful. Berkeley Softworks did that as well. So they created this amazing platform for users to use. And then they gave you a word processor, they gave you a spreadsheet, they gave you a personal database, they gave you a way to create graphics, and so on. What I wanted to do is actually walk through 2 of my favorite pieces of software that they wrote beyond GeoWrite, which is the one everyone talks about, myself included, because it's a fantastic word processor. GeoFile, which is their personal database software, and GeoPaint, which is a drawing tool, which is actually a lot more powerful than I originally gave it credit until I really started to learn it recently. And so I want to show you how I've married these 2 pieces of software together to create a really cool personal database. At least I think it's cool. And so what I decided to do was create a personal database of all of my boxed software. Admittedly, over the years, it's kind of gotten a little out of control. And I started to actually lose track of all the various versions that I might have across Amiga, Commodore 64/128, and even old Macintosh games and software. I got pretty far down the rabbit hole with creating my own database originally, and after sharing it with some folks in the community, someone shared what theirs looked like. They had created a really cool database of their D&D book collection. And what was so neat about it, beyond the fact that the topic was cool, they had created a little graphic across the top. And I was like, wait, you can do that? You can embed graphics into these? And that's when I went down the whole GeoPaint rabbit hole as well. And it brought the 2 together. And that's what I think is so cool about this, is how all of these software programs work together. In fact, and I don't know if it actually is true multitasking, it fooled me. In order to embed these graphics into these database fields, it sure feels like multitasking. It's awesome. At a high level, GeoFile would be considered by some as pretty basic and pretty simplistic. That's a feature, not a bug. That actually is what makes it approachable and actually fun to use, because it doesn't try and solve every single problem. There's a fantastic personal database program on the Amiga called Superbase, right? And I think it went all the way up to version 4. And you can create your own forms, you can create your own fields, you can create all of those data sets in very complex ways. It is lacking in fun factor, though. At a high level, what you can do, according to the manual, with GeoFile, you can store, recall, and analyze all kinds of information from client records and invoices to inventory lists and investments. You can even keep track of your recipes or a stamp collection. I mean, I might have done that back in the 70s. Do people still do stamp collections? I don't know. Making GeoFile perfect for your information handling needs either at home or in your business. I mean, for me, this is just for home, right? So, and because GeoFile is GEOS compatible, you will be using the same easy to learn and use graphic environment that you are already familiar with. Well, we're about to get familiar with it really a lot more today. And I think by the time I'm done with this, it might inspire a couple of you to want to give it a shot for yourself. I hope so. And if you do, let me see what you create when you're done. I would love to see how your stuff turns out and what it looks like. So guys, as a reminder, this is my setup. I went through fairly good detail in my last video of what this is all about from a hardware perspective. But at a very high level, this is my Commodore 128 DCR with 64K of video RAM. It's also got a CMD HD down at the bottom here, and that is what I mainly use as my work drive. In the back is a CMD Super CPU 128. That gives us incredible 20 megahertz of speed. It also has a 16 megabyte RAM card packed inside it. So that serves essentially as the REU. It's not being used as a RAM disk. It gives us all the RAM that we need to utilize this setup beautifully. Behind that is my RAM link. That also has 16 megabytes of RAM. I am only utilizing about 10 megabytes of it right now, and I use that only as my boot drive because it's super fast. But once we boot up, I actually move over onto the HD. And then I've got my FD4000 here for loading and sometimes saving files off in a different format. But usually I'm using this as a loading thing on occasion. So let's go ahead and fire it up, which will take about 9 seconds or so. And boom, there we go. And she's done. Okay, so before we just start with a totally blank canvas, I'll show you essentially my finished product. So this is sort of like a cooking show where you're going to get to see the dish we're about to cook before we go through the entire process of actually doing it. And so let me jump into GeoFile really quickly, which is right here. GeoFile 128 specifically. The truth is GeoFile 64 and 128, they're almost identical other than visual, and you get more space with GeoFile 128. At the end of the day though, if you're actually planning on printing these out, which I am, and I have, the 128 version doesn't really gain you that much because you ultimately have to know what the cutoff is for the print, okay? So 64, 128, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. All right, so I'm going to open my existing document so you can see what it is. And mine is this guy here, Games Library 2. Okay, and yeah, so you'll notice how it's kind of scrunched here, right? But basically that's because if I print it, this is essentially the cutoff spot. So I kind of used this in between these two arrows as my border because I was originally designing this all the way out to the edge, and it won't print that way. So in any case, so this is my database. I have a beautiful header here. I think it's beautiful that I drew myself in GeoPaint, and we'll go look at that here in a little bit. And then I created this form. I came up with all of the various fields that I wanted to track, like title, the year it was released for, generally the Amiga platform. That's mostly what we're looking at here. Now, if I move my mouse down, see my form keeps on going. There's no scroll bar like we're used to seeing in 2025, but it does scroll. And so as I go down, I have the genre that I'm trying to capture, any requirements that the game might have had on the box, any recommendations that the manual might have had or the box might have had. Sometimes I even put my own notes in here of what I would recommend to play it at its optimum format. And then designers, the origin, there's another little graphic. This one actually came from the GEOS folk out of their photo album, just to give it a little bit of visual spice, right? And then what's cool about this is you're like, okay, well, here's Zach McCracken. How many other things are in here? Well, you can use these arrows to go back and forth. So here's Zork Trilogy. Here's A Mind Forever Voyaging. So these are Infocom games. Black Crypt, fantastic Electronic Arts game for the Amiga, an Amiga exclusive, by the way. Bureaucracy, we're back into Infocom, and so forth. And a lot of SSI, Gold Box games are captured in here. I have so many of those across different formats. It's kind of crazy. It reminded me that there were some in there that I thought I'd finished and I never did. And I was like, oh my God, I need to go back and play these again. So this allowed me to then create a very cool database of all of my boxed software. And obviously I still have a lot of data entry to do. I'm gonna give you a really quick tutorial on how you can also create a similar type of database, and you can create your own. So let's just create a brand new document, and we'll just give it a name of test, hit return. It's putting it straight onto my hard drive. So you're given this. The easiest way for me to think about this when I was first doing it, if you've ever had to create a PowerPoint, it's a good way of thinking about it because you sort of need like a master slide, which creates like your base overall design. And then you have the actual slides themselves where you actually put your images or your text or whatever your content might be. It's the same sort of idea here. Form design, data entry, and print, right? So form design, since we haven't done anything yet, that's why it has this little star next to it. That's what we're about to do. And then the fields, you're going to create fields on the screen, but by default, there is no grid snapping, right? So you can just like freeform and draw your fields on the screen. I wouldn't recommend doing it that way personally. If you actually want it to look good when you're done, you want to turn align on, okay? Now, when you draw your fields on here, it's gonna very subtly snap to these grid dots all over the screen, which is actually really helpful. I kind of wish I could just make that permanently on because I don't really need it to be off. You can turn the grid background off if you want to. You can make it a gray background if you don't like the grids. I actually find the grid to be very helpful, so I just leave it on as the default. And then here are the various types of field. This is usually where I'm at. I'm in this world. So why don't we go ahead and we're going to do text field, and I will just start to draw on the screen, and I'll say, see how it's kind of snapping? It's crazy. It gives you so many increments. It's not to every grid dot, it's to every grid dot and the ones in between. So you can get some pretty fine tuning of these fields when you're doing your design, but I'll just start it off pretty basic, and so you click, you drag, and then you click again when you're happy, and I'll just click right there. And it's got this bolding around it to let you know that it's been selected, and I'm gonna say name. Okay, and then when you click off of it, that is now a field where it can start to store data across multiple forms or multiple records, right? So we've got name, and now we'll do, and I probably, you know what, you can go back in here and you can say, you can just edit it. Nothing in here is like permanent. This is a computer after all, right? It's just like word processing, except you're creating forms. It's really cool. So trust me, guys. Here we go. First name, and I'm just gonna put it right here. And I'll say last name. Or maybe you're doing your book thing and you're like, why don't I have author name? Why don't we do that? Let's pretend this is a book thing. So I'll do author. There, author name. And you know what? I'll just move this guy over here. Boop. And I can redo the sizing of it so it matches. And I'll do title. How about that? All right. And we'll make this really long. And what's interesting is you actually, when I'm doing the titles for the games that I was doing, actually, when you print, it'll crop stuff. You can type up to, if I remember correctly, 200 characters per field, which is quite a lot, realistically speaking, for most of the data that we're dealing with here, but it doesn't mean it'll display it. It's still down there, but you might not be able to see all of it. And ultimately, if you're gonna print this stuff, you're gonna wanna be able to see what you're typing. So it can wrap, but you're gonna wanna be able to see what's down below. So I'm gonna move this guy like this. I can move this guy back up like this. Actually, I'll keep him down here because we'll do some sort of like funky graphic thing later. Right? Title, author name, and we'll say, let's give it a good gap like that. And I'll give you right there because we care. Author names are never gonna be that long. Eric, come on. And I will say, what else would I care about? I would say I would care about the series, if it's part of a series. Like what if it's Dragonlance, right? Something like that. We'll just say year. It's your database. You know what you're talking about. You know what you mean. Something like this, and we'll say publisher. Random House, TSR. I don't know. We'll do a couple more of these. Give yourself some helpful hints. Sweet. There are data fields, and then up here, put a big old spot like that. To move it, you gotta get in here. You gotta touch these little squares. See, this one here will let you move the whole thing, and this one here will let you resize it. I think we've got a pretty decent little form going here. So what do we do now? Well, at this point, you could start entering data if you wanted to, right? You go into your options and you go to data entry, bloop, like that. You must select a sort field before entering data. So what that means when you come in here, how should these records be? They be sorted. And to me, it makes the most sense to sort them by title, which I apparently misspelled. So let me go fix that. So I need to select this form field and I need to go to set sort field right here. And see how it gave it this new outline, this kind of strange little pixelated one? That means this has been now selected for that. So I can actually go to data entry if I want to. It still shows that as this is the sort field. It gives these handy little visual cues. And now you can actually start to type stuff in. What we do is we decide to put all of my Infocom novels, actual novels that they wrote, into their own database. So I will start with The Lost City of Zork, right? As our first one. Okay, because data entry is fun. Don't you think so? All right, so let me type that in for our title, The Lost. No, actually, I don't want it to alphabetize by the. So I'm gonna say Lost City of Zork, comma, the, right? I want this to be in the L's. I don't want this to be in the T's. And then for the year, and it looks like this is from, wow, this is later than I would have expected. This is actually from as late as 1991. Remember when we used to read books, everybody? Come on. You guys still read books. The actual publisher on this? Avon Fantasy. Avon Fantasy. Okay. Have I read it? No. No, I've not. Series? Avon. Actually, this is Avon Books. Fantasy must be a division. Okay. I don't know if that's a man or a woman. You never really know with Robin. You know what I mean? Okay. Series. Because later I might just do all of my books, and this would be ways for me to find the Infocom stuff if I have a persistent field like that. And I'm going to say, I'm not going to put anything in the summary right now. Okay, so essentially that is a record. So what do you do? Well, when you're done with all your data entry, you Commodore key and N, or form, new form. So this is one form. What they call a form is a record in your database. So I'm going to say Commodore N, and now it's all gone empty. What happened? Well, it's because it's waiting for me to write another one. So now I've got the Zork Chronicles. All right, we'll enter this one. Okay, and this guy is from, when are you from? 1990. All right, and the publisher on this, is this Avon as well? Yes. Okay, read it? No, I haven't read any of these. I was just collecting them. Series, info, author name. Who are you? Oh wow, a new novel by the winner of the Hugo and Nebula Awards. How about that? George Alec Effinger. There we go. So he's somebody special. Okay, and then you just hit Commodore N. There, and now I'm on record number 3. But if I need to go back, I can use these arrows. There's Lost City of Zork, Zork Chronicles, etc. Okay, and so you start to fill this all out. Maybe you want this to look really cool. So you can create a header image if you want to. But you're not going to do that here inside a GeoFile. Let me go ahead and close. It's saving it on the fly as we go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to quit and we're going to run over to GeoPaint. GeoPaint 128 right here. Boom, look at that. All right, I will show you what I did for mine first, and then we'll create something real quickly for this other one. So we'll say open, and it's looking for my stuff, which is down at the bottom. Masthead 4. Boom. There we go. You're like, well, I can't hardly see that. How did you do that? Well, so what's really cool about this program is that it actually has a pixel drawing mode. So for example, if I go in here, this is going to remind some people of Deluxe Paint, I think, where you can actually Why they didn't give us an icon, you know, of like a magnifying glass. Maybe this was just so early days, that idea hadn't hit anybody's brain yet. I'm not sure, but it's the same idea. Double click on the pencil, you get this thing. You can click on an area, and I'll click on this area up here. Boom. And it's this interesting idea of clicking on whatever it is, it will give you the opposite. I don't have to keep changing. I don't have to keep changing the color. It's basically a mode of on or off, right? It's very binary right now, this black and white stuff. And so I'm just drawing, but if I click and I'm on this black, if I click again, now it's like I'm erasing. I'm really just drawing in white and black, back and forth, back and forth. But this is actually very easy to do. And because you have this beautiful handy grid when you're doing it, it actually is, I love this. I think this is so much fun and so cool. And I mean, you get down into like the nitty gritty of doing your pixel art stuff in here in monochrome, which is pretty wild. You can see down here, this is what it actually looks like, what the blob I just did, which kind of almost looks like an upside down Lego piece or something. So you can kind of see what it would really look like in real life. And then this thing over here, this is basically, it's just like GeoWrite. This is the entire sheet of paper that they're thinking you might need to know about if you're going to print. How you can use this to scroll around the page and also just kind of get a frame of reference as to where you are. And we will create a new one. And it saved it right onto my hard drive. You got to turn that on. These tools are pretty self-explanatory, but I'll blast through a couple of them. Obviously, this is for typing your text, which is how I did the games library text in mine. This is for creating boxes that are hollow. This is for doing stuff with patterns. And you do get one undo. You gotta be really careful with that though, because just clicking on the screen or trying to like deselect something, that can be considered a click, and now you can't undo if you just really screwed something up. So you have to be kind of careful with this when you're drawing. This is for, this is so cute. I can't believe no one else has stolen this idea, but this is for drawing with the pencil, and this is the eraser, and they made it all one big connected pencil, which is just like a fantastic UI design idea. Here's our paintbrush. You can actually use a ruler in here to create measurements. Why is that important? Because if you go through the manual and some of these training books that people wrote back in the day, some people utilized this tool, this paint program, to create layouts of their home, or maybe a bird's eye view of their house, and did landscape design for the yard. And they needed to actually use real measurements so that they could get an accurate idea of spacing of the various objects they were trying to place. It's really, really cool. You've got, this is nowadays, this would be a paint bucket, but for these folks, it was this fill tool, was this, what looks like a faucet. And then you've got this, this funny looking thing. And this is actually like an airbrush where you can actually paint with patterns, which is pretty wild. And then this is obviously a moving, and this is like selection. For me personally, I was mostly in this world, mostly in drawing land. I didn't care so much about this other stuff, but let's look at it at least for a moment. Like, here are all these different patterns, very Macintosh-like. So let's pick something that has some sort of weird stuff on it, like, I don't know, like this. So it fills this to show you what your pattern is. And I'll just create a square, right? And then if I were to do this, there's my pattern. Kind of neat. For me personally, I don't use stuff like this most of the time, but there are times when it's handy. Like, if make this the roof, like the shingling at the top of your house or your garage, that's going to save yourself some time, and it's going to look really nice when you're finished. Right? So that's, now I'm filling with black. You can go in here and just make it white. And it's basically like erasing at this point. It's just gone. So let's go ahead and just get something going here where it says, you have to draw the area that you want to type your stuff. Book. Library. And you can see I have all of these different styles of font, right? Bolding, underline, italics, outline, reverse, all of that kind of stuff. That's really cool. I have a few installed, like, for example, if I went into this, that looks very elegant, doesn't it? Corey. That's what I did for my games library, because it looked to me kind of pew pew, you know, like old school video gamey stuff. California. Yeah. These are ones that I installed actually because I thought I was going through this phase where I was trying to like read a lot of documents in here. Ultimately the Commodore or the BSW, the Berkeley Softworks, these ones are really like the best for printing and for reading in my opinion. But when you're doing like fancy stuff like this, well shoot, yeah, let's go in here and let's make this look really old school, right? And see, look how it does this wrapping for you. That's kind of cool. So I will leave it like that. I'll just create like a tiny little thing off to the side and give it some space like this. It's really small, I know. There, and now I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna be like, well, what is this? Now, something to keep in mind, I've actually kind of made a boo-boo here because I made this like really short. If I was doing this for real, I would actually make this, if I wanted this to be like book library with a bookshelf next to it, I would actually make this much taller, make the books taller, because when it prints, they're gonna be like half the height. What I wanna do is just draw like one freaking good book here. Can we do that? And we'll do like this. We'll do like this. Come on. Do. Do I want to do it like that? Yes, I do. Come on. There. And you can kind of see what's happening. So over here, it actually looks rather thin and skinny, doesn't it? So I might give it some extra girth. Give it a little extra belly. A little wider. We're all getting a little wider as we get older. I know I am. Okay. Oh, hang on. Undo. There. There. Gotta remember to do that second click. All right, so sometimes books have little things on them. You know, and I actually did pixel art on some of my game boxes on my masthead for Zork and Doom and Dune. I was like, what are some popular games that are short names, easy to draw in this format? Okay, so there's a book. We'll do one more. Yeah, that looks good. There. And then I'll use this guy because it gives me a little more detailed precision. You know what? I'll give it a gap. Hang on. Over here. Gap like that. Gap like that. And then gap like that. How does that look down there? That looks pretty good. In fact, I'll give you gaps too. That looks better when it's not touching. Okay, and then I'll grab this. Let's get that black. There. Okay, now we can draw in white if we want to. And you can just keep on drawing books. You can do diagonal ones. You can put a little teddy bear in the corner. You can do whatever. But as I get back out of here, and you just keep on building your book library, keep on going. But this is basically it. Grab that, select it. Okay, it's selected. And I can say edit, copy. And it just, you guys didn't see this, but over here, my hard drive light was blinking. Right, because it's not saving it like the way we think of is saving stuff to RAM. It was like putting that memory in what's called a photo scrap, which is a literal file that it writes to whatever is your work drive that you're running this stuff off of. So when you copy something here that you want to use elsewhere, it's going to make that an actual file on your drive, and it's going to call it a photo scrap file, okay? When you're running any of the Berkeley Softworks GEOS programs, there are other things that you can launch at the same time, like this photo manager. Check it out. There is my masthead that I was showing you guys earlier that I had drawn. And this is in the really cute old school GEOS style of paging and flipping between these little, what look like pieces of note paper on a notepad. Right, and these are ones that come with the program. And there's a bunch of stuff in here, and I actually did utilize the little earth, the little globe. Okay, I didn't draw that. This came from somewhere. There, that's the one that I put into, like, for my origin, like where was a game written. They have all these different little things that you can utilize across your other programs, which is actually really handy, that you can embed into various places. You can even copy and paste these into your GeoWrite documents. But let's go ahead and get this guy going. So what I want to do is I'm going to, like this, edit, copy, and then I'm going to go there. I just pasted the book library into the photo manager, right? There she is. So I can copy you. Now, let's go ahead and get out of here. Go back over to GeoFile. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. It might be too tall, but we can adjust our fields, remember? This is a computer. It's actually very, very easy to use, which is so cool. You don't have to get so stressy about this stuff. Even though it's old software, this is some of the most flexible software I've ever seen. Open. Let's go to test. Open. You got to go into form design again. Click on this guy, go to edit, paste picture. There's my book library. Let's move all this stuff down and then grow. I need even more space. Okay, grow. There, it just fits. It's kind of funny though. It's like, why is there? So what you can do, it could be the way that I selected it. I can go update this image again and try and reduce this space here, so there's not such a gap above it. You can try and get it really tightly cropped and save that. And if I go update the image, it'll update here, obviously, you know, as I copy it into the photo manager. And so that's how you can start to create your own personal database of various collections that you have, whether it be books or software or hardware or whatever it is that you want to catalog. This is super handy. And so then ultimately, if you have a printer, you can print this stuff out. There is actually a print from the options itself. And this gives you a lot more control. All these different settings in here where you can turn on or off like the boxes. You can turn on or off the headings, all of that kind of stuff. So before you do a single first print, you actually want to go into options and go into the print settings area, which is what this is, and set everything up the way you want it. I've already done that. This is very, very nicely explained in the manual, which you can download in PDF form online if you care to do it. Let's go back into data entry because you want to tell it which one you want to do. And I'm going to just do, let's see, this is Chaos Strikes Back Dungeon Master Expansion Set number 1. Okay, yeah, sure, why not? That sounds cool. I want to print that out so I can put it in a 3-ring binder, maybe. I'm not sure. And I'll say okay. Takes it a second. The sweet, sweet sound. There we go. Here she comes. Header image on here. It's going to use more ink than if you were to just print out your records the way that you in text form. I don't care. I've got a whole box of brand new ribbons from Amazon.com, a whole dozen, which only cost me 20 bucks for a dozen ribbons. So I'm going to have fun with this and not worry about stuff like that. So there we go. And to see what I mean about how it takes the image from the screen and kind of smushes it down. It's not nearly as tall as it was on the screen. It's a lot shorter. So you have to kind of keep that in mind as you're drawing and designing these. But ultimately, looking pretty good, right? So I know some of you are probably wondering, like, what is the point of this? What is the point of creating all of these? If you have to come through here and look at these one at a time, that feels kind of cumbersome. That feels like it would actually be kind of a pain in the ass to use. That's not really what this is about. I'm in data entry mode, so that's what it kind of looks like. you're going to create a search. This is really powerful. Create a search form right here, right? And it looks exactly like my records that I've designed. Every single thing that you add in here gives it more and more information to filter all of the records that you've already created, right? And I'm going to say I want anything from 1991. Okay, and I'll say okay. And then what you do is you click on the little search dude, which is this guy, to go forward, or that guy. They look like little eyeballs with the nose. Click on those to go forward or backward. So I have the Beholder 1991. That's interesting. That is not true. That is a mistake. I'll fix that later. Next. Gateway to Savage Frontier from 1991. Lemmings from 1991. What else? Secret of Monkey Island. Man, 1991 was a kick-ass year, you guys. Secret of the Silver Blades. Shadow Sorcerer. Starflight 2, man. All right, so anyway, you get the basic idea. You can create these search terms and then utilize that to sort and filter and search through your database. The bigger it gets, the more important this becomes. And the actual text that you're entering into these fields is actually really important. You actually want to kind of carefully consider what the different fields should be when you're creating your form, so that later you can more easily search the database when you're looking for stuff. I think this is really awesome. And it's actually fun to go through the creative process. And I guarantee most of the people watching this video right now have a lot of stuff. And whether it was since you've been a kid or since you've been a grown adult collecting when you finally had a paycheck, there's stuff in that house that would actually be really handy if you had a really cool database that you designed yourself and were able to keep track of all your things. So guys, that is GeoFile and GeoPaint in the beautiful world of GEOS. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. In fact, if you've made it this far and you haven't already liked or subscribed the video, please do that so you can get notified when I put out more content. That would definitely make my day. I hope I've inspired a few of you to try and install this yourselves and give it a shot and create some personal database records of some of your own collections, maybe your hardware collection, some other type of software collection or book collection. We all have a lot of things at this point, and I know for a fact I needed to get more organized. And it's really cool when you can use one of your 8-bit machines to help with the process and not just sit there and be for games all the time. I actually thought this was really a lot of fun to learn, and I'm still using it on a weekly basis because I have so much more to still do from a data entry standpoint. Now, that's a thing I wish I could offshore, to be honest. It's going to take me realistically another 8 to 10 hours to fill in the rest of the data. It's taken me 3 minutes per record because I'm having to cross-check my facts as I type everything in. I go across Moby Games. I go across AmigaLove.com's games library in terms of my ratings that I give things and so on. So I have to make, and even Wikipedia. So I'm having to just make sure, because I care, still have a long way to go because I'm pretty sure I have north of 300 boxed games in total, at least, maybe. And if I include software, I might never finish, but at least I can try, at least I can walk down this road and get a little more organized because, I'm starting to forget some stuff sometimes. Like, do I own this? Well, now I can go look. Now I can go see. Did I already finish that? I hope I remember that. I hope I remember something I've played and if I finished it or not. But so remember, guys, keep that Amiga and Commodore love flowing, and we'll see you next time. AmigaLove.